Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It has been 907 days since Indian and Chinese troops came eyeball to eyeball in the Galwan region. 20 of our soldiers sacrificed their lives not before pushing the PLA of China troops back to the place they came from. India made it clear to China and the world that not even an inch of Indian land will be given. On December 9, Indian and Chinese troops once again came eyeball to eyeball and indulged in a clash along the line of actual control in the Tawang sector in Arunachal Pradesh. PTI says that the face-off led to minor injuries to a few personnel from both sides. At least 6 soldiers on the Indian soil have been injured and are being treated in a hospital in Guwahati, and they are said to be out of danger. This comes after 30-second brief meeting of Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G20 summit in Bali. The opposition has already started to train their guns on the centre. The Congress said that the Prime Minister must answer in the Parliament and is back to the Lal Aankh taunt. Listen in to the Congress party.
Firstly, let me commend the armed forces of India, who always bravely repulse every Chinese conspiracy to occupy our territory. But what is Prime Minister Modi and his government doing? Till date, for over 2 years, China is occupying 1,000 square kilometer territory of India in the Ladakh region. In the Depsang Plains, they have occupied illegally India's territory up to Y Junction. Daulat Beg Oldi, the most strategic airstrip, is now in the range of Chinese artillery fire. Gogra Hot Springs, they continue to occupy our territory. Galwan, we know what all happened despite the valor of our soldiers. Now they are occupying area or attempting to occupy area in Tawang here, Arunachal Pradesh. And an unconfirmed report, which probably you do not know, is now saying that China has now occupied our territory in the Doklam area.
The Ministry of Defence, in its statement, clearly mentions that Indian troops faced Chinese troops in a firm and resolute manner. It states that both sides immediately disengaged from the area and that commanders held a flag meeting with the Chinese counterpart to restore peace and tranquility along the line of control. But that clearly is something that the opposition is not buying. And that brings me to the legitimate question on the Newshour tonight. Testing Mazboot Bharat's patience, is that what China is doing? That's the question. And the debate, India-China clash, that's the hashtag. And the debate, ladies and gentlemen, coming up on the other side.
You're watching the Newshour at 9. Debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Joining me this evening, Karan Verma, author and political analyst, Maroof Raza, consulting editor of Times Now, Mr. Dhruv Katoch of the Indian Defence. He joins us from the India Foundation. Also joining me tonight is Tehseen Poonawalla. He's our political analyst, supports the Congress party. Mr. Karthik Reddy of the TRS. Also joining me this evening, political analyst Dr. Suman Siraman. First up, let me go across to my colleague Srinjoy Chowdhury, who joins me on the Newshour. Srinjoy, what is the latest? There were these clashes on the 9th of December, and there was a flag meeting that was held on the 10th of December. Why is this information only coming out now? And that's the opposition's question, because Parliament is on.
Yes, Parliament would have spoken about in Parliament today. Yesterday, of course, was a Sunday, and then Saturday before that. But what we are hearing is that this was building up. Apparently, there was a very minor version of this clash, a really minor version of this clash at Yangtze about 10, 12 days ago. That's the first thing we are hearing. And also what we are hearing is that as a measure of abundant caution, India has called back from leave officers who are posted in the area who are in sensitive positions. That is the second thing that we are hearing. People have been called back from leave. Third, what we are hearing is that usually there are troops on both sides. But as a result, because of this clash, there are more troops on both sides in these areas. And fourthly, what we are hearing is that, yes, there have been 3 injuries that we have spoken about, 1 head injury and 2 other injuries. But besides that, some really small injuries or minor injuries, there have been quite a few more. Naturally, that would be the case if they have been throwing stones at each other for a fairly long period of time. What we are also hearing that the assessment on the Indian side is that the Chinese have suffered more injuries than we have. So that is really the position, Navika. The fact that, one, there was a very minor version of this, a very, very minor version of this at Yangtze about 10, 12 days ago.
Well, thank you, Srinjoy. Let me get Maruf Raza, consulting editor of the Times now. Maruf Raza, while the perception of the line of actual control varies, and that's what the statement from the Defence Ministry says, that this perception does lead to a few skirmishes here and there, and it's been happening since 2006. Yet, do you think the latest exchange between the PLA and the Indian Army at the line of actual control in the Tawang sector should be a cause of any escalated worry, or do you think this is something that's part of the routine along the line of actual control?
Well, it's not part of the routine, because routine is something which probably happens every month. As we know that in this kind of a situation, this is the first real serious build-up since the Galwan incident. There have been minor skirmishes here and there, but nothing that serious. Now, we have to understand a few things, Navika. One, that the line of actual control is the line which divides India's claims and Chinese claims in eastern Ladakh. So they are on the other side of it in Aksai Chin. We are on this side in the Ladakh Plateau and the areas around Leh. In the case of Arunachal, there is a McMahon line which has been defined quite clearly from 1914 onwards. And the Chinese have from time to time in the past expressed a willingness to agree on the McMahon line as Indian-China boundary in that part of southern Tibet, provided India accepts Chinese intrusions in Ladakh, which is Aksai Chin area. And there is a whole history to it. I won't waste much time. The bottom line is that when the chance was there for India to kind of settle the boundary dispute in a way that it wouldn't have these kind of flare-ups, there are diplomats on our front who didn't think it was wise enough to suggest to the political leadership that we do that. So we are left with unsettled boundaries, particularly in Ladakh and in Arunachal. Now the Chinese claim the entire areas adjoining these boundary lines. So there is an old Maoist dictum which I don't think Xi Jinping right now is strong enough to dismiss, even if he wants good ties with India, which is doubtful, that Tibet is the palm of my hand, Mao had said, and the 5 fingers are Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, and Arunachal. This clash has taken place in the junction point between Bhutan and Arunachal's line of control boundary. And the Chinese are trying to show once again a demand for Tawang, which is a very serious place of importance for the Tibetans, who the Chinese insist must all go back to China-held Tibet. We obviously not going along with that, so that's a point of friction. And Tawang has been under our control except for a short period in the 1962 conflict, where confusion in orders led to troops withdrawing and coming back, and there was fighting. Strangely enough, the Chinese, whatever gains they made in 1962, they went back to their original position, fearing that the snows would block the mountain passes and their troops will be caught up in Indian territory and therefore butchered to death thereafter, because the entire Indian army was not allowed to fight. At this point of time, the Chinese follow a systematic presence, increase of presence by moving in troops, trying to show that they've been there forever. And there have been routine claims, counterclaims by various military movements and patrols. However, the Chinese have always wanted to show that it's not just in Ladakh they have claims, but also in Arunachal, because the peace and tranquility agreement, which came out of the prime ministerial visits of Rajiv Gandhi, followed by Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Narasimha Rao, etc., these agreements are basically, I believe, they've run out of steam. We need to go back to the drawing.
Absolutely, we need to go back to the drawing board. But Tehseen Poonawalla, let's come to the political question and the question that has been raised by Mr. Randeep Surjewala. I want to ask you, of course, Parliament must be informed, but there is a time and place when these issues should be raised. Do you really think so? Or do you think any time and every time is time for politics?
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for having me on the show. And at the onset, thank you to Major General Dhruv Katoch for the services you've rendered to our country. It's because of people
Why not
like
to Maruf?
And
he's also served in the
yes,
army.
of course. And Maruf, it's because of people like you all. I would have come to Maruf. They're safe. And I want to take Maruf's point further on Tawang before to answer your question specifically. See, China has always had its designs on Tawang because it doesn't want the future Dalai Lama to be associated with the birthplace of the 6th Dalai Lama. That has been China's strategic policy. And we know, and you covered this when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister and Arunachal Pradesh was declared a state. It was Operation Checkered Board under General Sundarji, and how China had to backtrack. So yes, after 62, China has had to backtrack. So first, again, a salute to our Indian army for standing up to China every single time. So this is a region that is strategically important for India, and China wants to take it. Coming to your political question, I do believe there is never a good time or a bad time to tell Parliament. What makes us different from China and what makes us so amazing is that we are a parliamentary democracy where everyone is accountable to Parliament, no matter how high he or she is. Therefore, Parliament must be told in its wisdom. If the Prime Minister or the Honourable Defence Minister don't want to tell Parliament right now, they can at least call a meeting of senior opposition leaders, have the Army Chief brief them or the CDS brief them. But briefing opposition is extremely important. It is something, it's a convention Prime Minister Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh ji, Rajiv ji has followed. During Operation Checkerboard, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, despite having the brute majority, did call Prime Minister Vajpayee and explained to him exactly what General Sundar was doing, and that was prior to that was Operation Falcon. So it is a tradition India has held good, and Prime Minister Modi must inform Parliament. That is the only democratic way. That's what separates India from China.
Well, so let me get in Mr. Katoch, Major General Dhruv Katoch, and Major General Dhruv Katoch. You know, is the opposition jumping into this entire debate without even waiting for the time of the day that the Prime Minister actually calls for such a meeting? After all, when the Parliament is in session, you know, one would assume that the government would inform Parliament. But to raise the issue the minute the news sort of breaks on public platforms, do you think, is that the issue, you know, is that the time for the opposition to raise the issue of the Parliament not being informed without waiting for any time to lapse?
Thank you, Navika. Navika, very frankly, I cannot comment on either the government or the opposition. Politics will continue. But I would like to comment on this particular incident because I've had the privilege of commanding this division. I have walked this front. I know this area. So the first part of it is, you know, that it is a very clearly defined area. When we look at the tri-junction, from there we have the Namkachu running. We have the Chinese on the northern side of the Namkachu at the Thagla Ridge, and we are on the southern side on our own ridge line. Right. So then we come further east. We have got right up to Bumla. There is absolutely no doubts as to what the ground situation is. At Bumla is a place where we have regular flag beatings. It is a place which has also become a tourist attraction. Now you go further east, and then you hit the point of Yangtze, and this was the post you see when General Sundarji, when the Chinese actually started intruding into our territory. That was the time when we had actually occupied this area in the 80s. Right, and we continue to occupy it. It is a very difficult area. When I commanded the division, we didn't even have a road up to there. There was a track which we used to, lug up our luggage and all that. Now things are better. Now, as far as this particular situation is concerned, what used to happen is, because we are occupying the ridge line, and when the Chinese would come to patrol, our patrols would go down. At some point, they would meet each other, and then both patrols would disengage. This has been going on for quite some time, as has already been mentioned. I think the difference which has come in now is that they attempted to build some sort of a sangar or a bunker or some barbed wire or something, and there the troops objected and told them no way, and it led to, well, whatever it led to, fisticuffs, etc. People have been hurt on both sides, but the point is not how many of ours were injured and how many of theirs were injured. I think the larger point, and which is a cause of concern to me, is why have the Chinese done this at this time? I don't think it is a political decision taken at Beijing by Xi Jinping. In my view, this is a local decision by the military commander for whatever reason he may have done it. But I think he has gone horribly wrong, because Tawang is the one place where I don't think either the Chinese or the Indians want any interference on each other's territory. Should it come to war, this is the place where the Chinese will face a very massive defeat. So this is not really a place where they would like to intrude or do anything. If at all, if they have to do these things, they will go further east, right up to the eastern corner of Arunachal, where our roads still have to go up to the LAC, but the Chinese have got their roads. When I commanded my division there, we used to always ask, the government at that time that, listen, we need our roads, but the roads didn't come up. Now, very frankly, the attempt to establish connectivity up to the line of actual control has only started post 2014. I'll be very honest about that. Before that, we didn't have that connectivity for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into the political reason why they didn't have it. But the point is, we didn't have it. From 2014, it has started, and now we are getting closer and closer, both as far as the Ladakh is concerned and Arunachal is concerned. This face-off, I think, is going to be a snub on the Chinese side, because what they attempted to build has been destroyed. And because we are holding the heights, anytime they attempt to build up a sangar or a structure again, it will be destroyed. There is no way in which they can move up in time and space into that area and beat the Indian army, which is on the top, which will go down into that area and stop them. So when we are looking as to the time they will take to reach that area and the time we will take to reach that area, it will be approximately the same. But if they try to build up, we won't permit it. So I'm very frankly, I'm surprised. Perhaps the Chinese thought that because of winter, the Indians have withdrawn, there'll be nobody there and they can get away. But that is a very wrong assessment which they have made. And leaving aside the politics of it, it doesn't matter which political party is in power in the center. The Chinese will do what they have to do. It is the military's job, and I'm making it very certain. If I am the divisional commander there, it is my job to see that the area is safe. It is not anybody's job, neither the opposition nor the government. I am there. I'm the only person on the ground who is there. It is my troops who are there.
Well said.
And we will ensure it is done.
Well said, Major General Dhruv Katoch. So my question to you, Sumant C. Raman, if it's the job of the military and if it is a situation which is now under control, do you think opposition, when it hypes this entire issue, is not just playing into the hands of the Chinese, the Chinese whispers that they want to create in the world about their own power, by escalating the pressure on the government here? It's a question.
Not at all. Not at all, Navika. I think the opposition is well within its right to ask for Parliament to be kept fully in confidence as to the situation on the ground. I think that's a basic that has been followed ever since independence. I can't think of any time when whichever the ruling party at the center, they have hid, or not given the information to the Parliament. Now, the second part is, I think where the opposition has a problem is with the actual situation on the ground, where multiple reports say that following the clashes in Galwan, there have been Chinese, movements
and buildings which have been put up on areas which were quote unquote disputed territory and so on. And yesterday or day before, there was a report which said that up to 1,000 square kilometers, if not more, which were once in play, are no longer in play because the Chinese have encroached on that. Now we do not know the truth. And that the thing is, even Parliament, the opposition is not fully aware of what the situation is. This is not a political issue. This is not a BJP Congress issue. Every single politician in this country.
You say you don't have the details, and the details should be shared. Maroof Raza.
Every opposition parliamentarian and party person stands 200% with the government on this issue.
Absolutely.
Well, Maroof Raza, do you think information about whether 1,000 kilometers has been taken over by the Chinese, etc., and all of these fears that the opposition has, are they justified? And should the government...
Not at all, Navika, because, 1,000 kilometers is not 100 square yards. 1,000 kilometers is damn well 1,000 square kilometers. That is the kind of territory on which some of the island territories are countries. You can't have such a large chunk of land with the Chinese, with so many intruding elements from media to satellite pictures, etc., completely being put under the carpet. So I disagree with that. Yeah, maybe an odd bit here and an odd bit there. Are people confusing the area the Chinese are occupying in Aksai Chin and claiming they have suddenly occupied all that? They've been there from before parliamentary debates became the norm. They've been there actually from the early 1950s. It is another story that it was not addressed and brought into the public domain till it came into public light in 57-58 when Panditji admitted that yes, they were there because of an ambush that took place and because of certain build-up of certain things. But generally, the approach in Delhi has been to kind of tone down what China is occupying, firstly. Secondly, please understand, much as I respect General Katoch, I disagree with 2 points that he made. One is that the Chinese military commanders don't operate at will. Whatever little I've read, and I've read a lot on China, that entire system in China are like Beijing is the octopus's head, and every arm of the octopus is controlled by Beijing and its diktats, whether foreign policy, financial policy, military policy, etc. And if there is a maverick commander who has done this on China's part, he will be very quickly removed because if it goes against Xi Jinping's policy. But the fact is, does it go against Xi Jinping's policy or not? I don't think it goes against Xi Jinping's policy because he is under pressure to show that China is becoming militarily more and more aggressive and important. It's not just on the Sino-Indian border. He has been having to lick his wounds on Taiwan. He's not being able to make headway in South China Sea. He's not making much headway in other territories around China's borders. The only place where they have slimily moved in is to do an agreement with the Bhutanese. And earlier we had stood up for the Bhutanese in the Doklam or the Dokala standoff. But now they've kind of done some kind of a boundary arrangement with the Bhutanese. So the only country that China has boundary disagreements with is India. And they are going to try and muscle flex their way to see that China is rising. So what if it's not rising economically, it is rising militarily. I agree with General Katoch that the military will not allow them to intrude into our territories. But I also believe that the military in India operates given on the guidelines and terms of reference laid out by the political leadership, the CCS, the NSA's office, and every patrol that does the rounds on the Sino-Indian border is approved by the China Study Group, which is made up of military serving retired officers, made up of diplomats, made up of political experts, and everything is taken very cautiously that not to ruffle Chinese feathers. So I don't think the fault lies with us, but push to the wall, we will hit back. And this is something that China wants to limit our ability to stand up.
Absolutely. And Mr. Karthik Reddy, of course the opposition has a right to know, and of course the government has a duty to inform the parliament. Having said that, my question is only about the timing. I'm not contesting the fact that parliamentarians as well as people of India need to know the situation. But to make claims like 1,000 square kilometers have been taken over, number one, are you questioning the Indian military forces, as Major General Katoj and Maruf both have said that it is their job? Nobody actually from the political dispensation goes and guards the boundaries of the countries. It's always the military which does that. So if you say 1,000 kilometers, square kilometers have been taken over, number one, are you putting a question mark on the way the Indian army is operating, number one? And number two, on such matters, there's one thing to issue a statement saying that Parliament must be informed, and there's completely another way in the manner in which both the Congress party and Mr. Asaduddin Owaisi of the AIMIM have raised this issue. My contention is only about the manner in which it has been raised.
At times like these, I believe all political lines should be blurred out. I can hear myself.
We'll correct that.
At times like these is when, as political party, we should tag together and stand behind our security forces and especially our nations. And Navika, we have to take this opportunity to salute our security forces and remember and remind ourselves the sacrifices at Galwan, Major Santosh Babu and his colleagues who spared their lives in protection for our country. We have to spare a thought for them, and we have to keep in our thoughts and prayers. But everything said, Navika, your point to why there should be a line for the opposition to question and not to question, as I said, this is a juncture when we should all blur out political lines and we should stand behind our security forces, but it doesn't mean the country should be kept in dark. And if we are not sure if the Chinese incursion is for 1,000 square kilometers or more or less, as a citizen of this country, I believe I deserve to know some information, whether the Chinese incursion is strategic, or as one of your panelists today has mentioned, no, it was some maverick general or some general who was thinking too big for himself. Doesn't the parliament or the citizens of this country need to know that this strategic incursion of the Chinese, which we keep hearing for the last 8, 10, 12, 15 years, that 10 square kilometers the Chinese have come in now, 20 square kilometers the Chinese have come in. The parliament or the citizens of the country deserve to know what exactly is happening on the border. We are not on the border, as you said, the politicians are not fighting this battle. But as citizens, don't you think, Navika, that we need to know what exactly our Chinese are trying to pull? And what is that our security forces are trying to do? We deserve to know when our soldiers laying their lives in protection for this country, and if not, we do not know if there is incursion. Did the Chinese occupy our land or did they not? Don't you think we deserve to know? I think this is where the difference is, Navika. We are not contradicting or we are not opposing what our soldiers have done, but we deserve to know what this country,
and he told me that the thing that hurt him and the people there the most was when people start doubting whether we gave an inch to the Chinese or not. And the opposition is guilty of this from the past 2 years. Just before you ran the show, Randeep Surjewala, we saw that bite where he said an unconfirmed report claims. And Mr. Sumansi Raman also said another unconfirmed report. For God's sake, the last thing we can do is bring these unconfirmed reports. Let's start trusting our armed forces and let's not come up with these unconfirmed reports which hurt the morale of our soldiers who very bravely have left the Chinese once again with a bloodied nose. Let's take pride in that and let's rally around them. The least we can do is stop spreading these unconfirmed reports. That is a great disservice the opposition has done time and again.
Fair point. Karthik Reddy, Sumansi Raman both want to come in. Karthik Reddy first. I'm coming to you, Dr. Sumansi Raman. Karthik Reddy.
Navika, see, here's my point. Here's my point. We raise a point here as a citizen here because there's a genuine concerns we have. We are not question we'll never do. Our security forces have staked their lives in protection of this country. We respect their word and we respect their decision. But as leaders who run this country, when there is ever a doubt, I think it is on the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister to address the nation of this country via the Parliament or via press or somehow tell us what exactly is happening. We do not know.
Say the Chinese have occupied our land without having any confirmation, spreading rumors.
Sir, I did not say. I am telling you we do not know. I think the country deserves to know what exactly is happening on the border.
Do you criticize that? Do you criticize?
Sir, I did not say anything.
News coming in. The Congress party has decided to move a motion in Parliament. They want more details of these clashes at the line of actual control to be shared with the Parliament. Suman Sriraman, I'm coming to you, Tehseen.
Yeah, one quick point. Now, nobody, the entire point that Karan Verma made, it is relevant because the government is not providing the information. Where do these unconfirmed reports and rumors come from? If there was authorized information coming from the military or the government, there would be no need for any unconfirmed reports. Let me finish, sir. Let me finish, sir, please. Please, sir, 1 minute.
These unconfirmed reports
1 minute, sir. 1 minute, sir. 1 minute. 1 minute, sir. Sir, 1 minute.
1 minute, Karan.
Sir, 1 minute. No, sorry, sir. Sir, 1 minute. 1 minute. Let me, we have Mr. Maruf Raza, who's a very respected defense analyst on the show. He himself said, they may have taken a odd bit here and an odd bit there, but it's not likely to be 1,000 square kilometers, which is quite possible. Nobody knows where this 1,000 square kilometer number came from. I've seen 60 square kilometer, one report says 300. Mr. Maruf Raza, let Mr. 1 second, sir. You have to understand that everyone is behind this, our government on this issue. The problem comes when information is not
fair point, but information is of utmost importance, and I take your point on that, Suman Sriraman. But I also want to tell our viewers tonight that the Sikh regiment and the Jat regiment have shown exemplary courage. They virtually surprised the 300 or so troops of the Chinese PLA, which came across, and they surprised them because maybe the Chinese soldiers felt that they would have a cakewalk and a walk around the park, but it wasn't really so. But Tehseen, motion moved, possibly a showdown coming up in Parliament. Does this actually play out to the script written in Beijing somewhere?
No, I don't think so. I don't want to use the word showdown. Parliament is a place where the country should be addressed. What the Honorable Prime Minister, I'm taking this medium because I know that the Honorable Prime Minister takes you and Times Now extremely seriously and he watches it, and Maruf is here and General Saab is here, Major General Kachot Saab. My suggestion is, why don't you call an all-party meeting with the presidents and the national parties and speak to them, say, okay, we will not speak in Parliament, but let's have an all-party meeting. Maruf ji is here and he will agree with me. Arunachal has been India's success story. In 80s, as Maruf ji said, that India decided that it will always defend Tawang. It was decided that the Hatungla reach is where Indians have the best chance to defend. So Operation Falcon was initiated after IB spent an entire season there to see how we can do it. And our soldiers were put on top at the heights, and that's how they occupy these heights where today we have an advantage. But every single time Prime Minister Indira Gandhi or Rajiv Gandhi occupied those places or did some positive moves, they kept the opposition in charge. So much so that in 86, when Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi declared Arunachal Pradesh as a state and Western powers declared another war, China had to backtrack. China backtracked. In 67, 68, China lost at Nathula and Chola. It was again the Jat regiment.
Well,
that
it would have helped.
So you must help the opposition.
If you really want to go that far, then you must remember what Major General Katot said. Maybe some roads could have been built in the north.
We did occupy higher spaces.
Which really started to be built seriously only after 2014. But this is not about the blame game of what Indira Gandhi did or Rajiv Gandhi did or what happened during Pandit Nehru's time. It's about today, in the present. And the Congress planning to move a motion, adjournment motion led by Adhir Ranjan Chowdhury, the senior most opposition leader in Parliament, and let's see how the government responds to that. We leave it at that for the moment, but of course, big story, and we'll continue to track this minute to minute with every detail from inside and from our sources. Thank you very much to all my panelists for joining me on this big debate number 1.